Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live. Um, yeah, I've had some interesting camera stuff going on. Um, for this week's episode, I wanted to start off by giving you a little bit of a greenhouse update. So, we're actually going to go visit a couple places, or well, one place that we've been to earlier this year and look at a crop that we've looked at a couple different times. So, these plants that you're going to see at the beginning of this week's greenhouse update, we saw all the way back a couple months ago when there were little cuttings that just came in and been stuck, and we grow roots on them, and then they get transplanted. And well, now they're getting ready to be shipped out. So let's take a look at what's happening out in the greenhouse. Above my head, these hanging baskets we've been following since they were cuttings back early this spring. And now they're ready to start shipping out, and we actually have more baskets on the floor that are going to take their place. Directly across from the greenhouse we were just in is this greenhouse, and it is one of the oldest greenhouses we have here at Bob's. Back in the 1980s, this was the main production area, and today we mainly use it for ferns and hanging baskets. So we always have kind of a different mixture of crops in here throughout the growing season. But right now, as you can see behind me, we have ferns setting on, they're actually setting on hanging baskets, so they're elevated a little bit, and they have drip tubes running to them. And then we also have fern hanging baskets overhead. So, fun fact about this greenhouse, this is actually the site of our first YouTube video, which would have been, oh my, almost 12 years ago? Wow, that makes me feel old. Here we are in another section of one of the older greenhouses here at Bob's. And overhead in this section, we have begonia hanging baskets. So let's take a closer look at some of them because they are starting to show some really beautiful blooms. For greenhouse updates, gardening tips, and more, give us a follow on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And to learn more about Bob's Market, you can find us online at bobsmarket.com. So that's a quick update of what's happening out in the greenhouse. And yeah, it was kind of cool. I was down there recording that this morning and realized, hey, this is where I recorded our very first YouTube video all the way back in 2009. And, well, of course, as I said at the end of the video, you can always follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, at Bob's Market. And if you're watching this video right now, give it a like and a share, and that helps it get out and reach more people. And if you're following us over on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. And, well, last week we were talking about my landscape at my house and kind of how I went through the process of planning it. And of course, last year you saw the meadow garden. And it's something that I've been working on and kind of experimenting with over the last few years. And this year, it's really starting to kind of finally take shape. Last year, I did a large expansion with wildflowers into this area, and my plan is to make it even larger this year and make the shape more organic. So if we look at an overhead view, it's kind of this yellow area over off to the left-hand side there. And basically the area right in behind the garage that's yellow is where the current wildflower garden is. So all the rest of that area I need to expand into, which means that I had some tilling to do. And with tilling up a garden section like that for wildflowers, you actually don't want to till too deep, because that can disturb weed seeds that are dormant in the ground, and that's something that you really don't want to deal with. So last night was a good night to till. I tilled up both my vegetable garden, and I also got the first couple passes done on this future meadow garden. So I made a video of that. And let's see, before we head out for the video, Sharon Rhodes says, "Hi, how much are your hanging baskets?" I don't know yet. We currently don't have any in stock out in our garden centers because it's still too early in the spring here for hanging baskets. Don't have pricing yet on those. But well, let's head out to the garden and take a look at tilling. All right, this evening I am out here in the garden, and well, I'm getting ready to till up the row crop area of my garden here behind me. But I just finished doing some weed eating, and what I was doing is weed eating down the grass in this area where I'm going to till it up for wildflowers. So I kind of scalped it down as low as I could get, and that helped kind of define the area right here, so it'll be easier for me to see when I'm tilling. But it also got rid of some of that overgrowth, so that way it'll make it easier to kind of chop up and start to break up with the tiller. Of course, all I'm trying to do in this area is just strip up that sod layer. I don't want to go too deep and start disturbing any latent seeds for weeds or invasive plants that might be down below the surface. So hopefully by the time I get done with this, it'll look more like where I had the wildflowers planted last year. And speaking of wildflowers, in this area, I have some of the perennial varieties starting to come back. So I am going to overseed this area. So I just need to wait and see what comes up, and then go in and kind of do some light cultivation here and there and just overseed it. And I'll probably put down a thin layer of like some used potting mix or something like that. Just to kind of help hold the seeds in and give them a good start. As always when you're tilling, ear protection. Alright, so that was ground that's already been tilled over the years. Now I'm getting ready to break into ground that's never been tilled before. So you're going to see the tiller jumping a lot and really having a hard time with it. So whenever you're breaking fresh ground with a tiller, you have to take your time and really watch what you're doing. So I just finished up tilling what's going to be the new Wildflower edition. So over here was the old Wildflower area. I did kind of run the tiller through a few spots where I knew nothing was coming up. I've got some little grass that's encroaching there, and I'm going to have to deal with that also. But in this area, I did 2 passes with the tiller. The first pass was only about 1 inch deep, and then the second pass was down about 2 inches. So I basically just scraped up the sod, and now I'm going to let it set for a little while. That should kill off most of the grass, and then I'll go back over it a couple more times just to break up that grass once it dies out and once it dries up, and it should be ready for sowing wildflower seeds. As I mentioned before, I'm going to move that seeding area over to this area in the wildflower garden. So from the back side here, in relation to the house, I'm going to have this little path that goes out to the seeding area, and around it I'm going to plant cosmos. And then I actually thought about going down both sides with zinnias to kind of frame this area in. And then heading out down this way, all this area is going to now grow up in grass, and I'm basically going to have a path going down this way that's going to go to a little seeding area over there. So I'm going to have the old paths kind of circling through that way. They form kind of a Y shape, and then one will branch off and come around, and it'll all tie in right here to a little seeding area. And then kind of the cutoff will be where that post is over there. That's my neighbor's. That's the corner of our property down to the crepe myrtles down there. So eventually, in a few years, I want to plant a hedgerow or something along there to kind of form a natural wall. And well, that is the current progress of the meadow garden. So that's a quick update of the progress of the meadow garden. And if I jump back here, so this is the layout that I'm shooting for, and you can kind of get a sense now, since I tilled that up, of kind of the shape of it. So the kind of yellow area there is going to be wildflowers, and also I'm going to be extending the grassy area back to meet my neighbor's field. So I still have a lot of tilling to do because I'm going to put in a couple other beds, and I have some daffodils that I need to dig up and move. But that is kind of the bulk of the tilling. I'm probably going to have to go over that area at least one more time to help break up the grass once it dies back. And of course, the existing area and that area I've got to seed. And you can also see on this map there's a couple yellow arcs, and those are some smaller wildflower plantings that I'm planning on doing. But yeah, it all comes down to planning your work and then working your plan. So I've used a combination of Google Maps and a couple other things of photos that I've taken over the past few years to kind of map out my landscaping plan, and now it's just a matter of implementing that plan over the next few months. So Gardening, sometimes it can kind of seem like you've got a ton of projects all at once that you need to take care of. But, this project is taking years, and I'm slowly biting off a little bit at a time and slowly kind of building what I want. So, it's going to take years. As I said in the video, I want to do a hedgerow eventually. And that, you've got planting it, but then you also have the years of growing it out. And I also want to add more trees into this meadow space. So this is going to be probably a decades long project. But, it's something that I really want to shoot for. And some of my plans for this summer is to start to incorporate more things for wildlife in that area. Right now, we're helping support pollinators and birds, but we also need things like a water source. So I want to get like a bird bath in there and different things like that. And also some lawn furniture. our our property right now is pretty devoid of any outdoor seating area. Along the front of our house, we have this nice stone flower bed that actually kind of makes a nice natural seating area. Um, but I do want to get some benches and things like that for out in the meadow garden area. And I'm planning on putting in a fire pit, maybe a couple Adirondack chairs or something like that this year. So those are all things that I'm working toward. So hopefully you enjoy following along with my crazy gardening projects, and also with the greenhouse updates. If you get our newsletter, which you can subscribe over at bobsmarket.com, you probably got a notification that we're having our annual spring color tour. For the last 2 years, we've canceled it for obvious reasons. But this year we're bringing it back, and something that we did because, there's still, um, issues with gatherings of gatherings of a large number of people. Um, we limited the number of tickets available. And, they all got booked within 48 hours. So, something that I'm looking at possibly doing is a virtual spring color tour. So, if you didn't get a ticket for the in person spring color tour, since it's already booked up, I'm going to be planning and I'll be announcing a virtual spring color tour. And it'll probably just be something that'll be exclusive to YouTube. So you can either watch it directly through our website or on YouTube. So that's something that I'll be announcing probably within the next week or two. And, I think that's all that I have for this week. So until next time, keep growing.